Join us today for an action-packed episode of Locked On Fantasy Baseball. We talk about the crazy Juan Soto trade, free agent signing, and free agent predictions.
You are Locked On Fantasy Baseball, your daily fantasy baseball podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, fantasy baseball fanatics, and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast, brought to you by Locked On Sports Network, your team every day. As always, we're your number one host for all your fantasy baseball knowledge, and thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. I'm your host, Matthew Ane. You can find me on all social media platforms, podcasting apps, and whatever. You could please leave a 5-star rating and review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you may listen. And if you're watching on the YouTubes, please click the bell below. That'll subscribe you to the channel, and that'll give you an alert every time we drop a new episode. And if you want a little bit more than what we offer on this 30-minute podcast, please check out our subtexts, where we're going to be releasing all this beautiful off-season information like rankings, busts, and so much more. So please check out and sign up for that. It's in the description below. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started today. All right, guys, we got a crazy episode for you today. Some wild trade happened today with Mr. Juan Soto being traded over to the New York Yankees. And if you all don't know about Dom and I, which Dom wasn't able to make it today, he got traded to the Yankees. We're Yankee fans, and we're excited about it. But we're not just excited about it for being Yankee fans, but we're excited about it for fantasy. Excuse me there. In summary here, Juan Soto going to the Yankees is an incredible feat and going to be very fantasy relevant and valuable. Now, we all know if you're a everydayer and you've been listening to the show for a long time, you know about my stance on new players, new teams. And honestly, there's very few players that really break that mold where they go to a new team and they have a down year in at least a category or two where they have a really slow start. And I don't think that Juan Soto is going to be the exception of this rule, truthfully. Juan is obviously a great player, but if you look at his first year when he got to the San Diego Padres, it was just not the prettiest thing. He had what? I apologize here. He came out, he had like 182 at-bats there, which isn't much. Came out, hit about 236 and whatnot. It really just wasn't a wonderful season. Finally turned it around in this year and, really smoked the ball off the cover. Now, who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he'll get a whole off season and he'll adjust and be hanging out with Aaron Judge and just feeling completely rejuvenated, finally going to a winning team. But, I don't know how much I trust it, because a lot of guys have fallen victim to being on a new team for a full season, and it's guys, big names too. It's not even like little dudes, like where it's like a nobody. Trey Turner was not an exception to this rule. Freddie Freeman was not an exception to this rule. Nolan Arenado was not an exception to this rule. Castellanos, Bryce Harper, the list goes on of players that have just not performed as to expectation going into this awesome situation of a winning team and a better ballpark. Like, it took them time to adjust. Trey Turner specifically is probably the most fresh in your minds, because if you had Trey Turner last year, you were pretty frustrated with owning him just based off of the fact that he wasn't living up to pretty much like the number one pick overall last year. And yes, he finished out the season pretty decently, but it was nowhere near the standards of Trey Turner and being a first-round pick. Now, obviously, the rule is in full effect, and I think next year he will bounce back, but I'm not talking about Trey Turner all that much. But what I am saying is, for Juan Soto owners, I'm going to say that, hey, don't expect way too much from this dude. He might break the mold, but I don't foresee it being this world beater of a player like he normally is. I think there's going to be a dip in something, maybe batting average, maybe runs or ribs or power for that matter. I don't know. I don't know what stat is going to fall, but if you look at Freddie Freeman when he went through that transition, it wasn't the prettiest. And it was just one of those things where his power was down after hitting 35 home runs. His average was still immaculate, but that power number that, was getting him thrusted into the early second round, end of the first round that year, just was completely gone. And I don't know what Juan Soto is going to lack, if at all, but, we shall see. The only other thing that could possibly drive him to perform at tippy top shape and tippy top form would be if he makes it through spring training, makes it to spring training, and makes it to opening day without a new contract from the Yankees, which I don't foresee happening. Because then I can see, okay, my guy is, fighting for that contract, is going to go and play extra heavy, and it might even be an MVP year just because Juan Soto always has that in there. At any given time, this dude can have an MVP season. But on top of that, he'd be playing for that big money, get paid because he wants to get paid. Dude's 25 and he's been an all-star for what? The last, I don't know, ever. So like Juan Soto definitely has an opportunity to make some serious bank this year. And I wouldn't say give Shohei a run for his money, but very well could come in within 75 to 50 million away from Otani's deal. So, I mean, Juan Soto is definitely going to be somebody that is looking to get paid. Excuse me one second. So, with that being said, we'll see. My feelings will change based off of whether he gets a contract or not. So, we shall see. And, let's just stop talking about the negatives. Let's talk about the possibilities now for just like, the implications for 2025, or what is the possible ceiling for even 2024? Well, we all know that Yankee Stadium is a home run hitting park. And we all know that Aaron Judge is successful there. Why couldn't Juan Soto be successful? And they both have great power, so why not? Juan Soto has every opportunity to be incredible. Yankees are about like a two players shy of really just being one of the best teams in baseball again in that division too. It's going to be hard, but they really are. And adding Juan Soto is definitely a nice piece. If we could see the Martian come back, which is Dominguez, healthy and is able to play the field and is able to just, continue and build off of what he did for his first and only 2 weeks of his major league career, then, you're going to see the makings of a really good lineup. And if Volpe could take a step forward, then more and more of this team can start coming in. And then you still got Rizzo, you still got Torres, and maybe we'll start getting some influx of talent there. And I still think if they bring in somebody else we're going to talk about later, that I think that we could seriously have some real gel on this team, and Juan Soto should reap the benefits. And that, with that being said, the dude could have like 100 runs, 100 ribs, 40 bombs with ease, batting a nice 295 to 300 and change. Like Juan Soto has all the upside in the world to just do that as well. I don't know how likely it is in this first season there is ultimately it, but I'm talking ceiling play. I'm talking everything that is the possibility. So right now, I guess after this long-winded 8-minute, 9-minute take on Juan Soto is, where am I drafting him right now? This is the best case scenario for his landing spot. So what I will say is I don't know if I'm drafting him anywhere before pick 10. 10 is where I feel comfortable. If I would really like my say, if he would fall to 12, then I would love it even better because then I get him and another person on the turn. And Juan Soto's worth it. He's still a first round pick. He's just not my favorite choice out of the bunch. And in all honesty, I don't even know how comfortable I really feel about him even in the first. But that's where I'm really like, okay, if I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it there between 10 and 12, and obviously all the way to 14 in those NFBC leagues. But even if he falls into the second round, you smile, you take him, and you just say, okay, I'm moving on. So Juan Soto, still high end pick, still going to be better than most, but just may not be the world beater that you would want out of your first round pick, essentially is where I'm going with it. And before we talk about the other half of this trade and all these other awesome names that I have on this list, I have an ad break for you. Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. And that's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in the action than now. The app is super easy to use, and there's a wide range of betting options, including point spread, player props, over and under, and so much more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to kick off this NFL season right. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, and we are back, ladies and gentlemen. And I am excited to finally move on and to talk about the other dude on the other side. And it looks like essentially they loaded up on all pitching. And I'm going to talk about the two most important names in this trade, in my opinion, that the Padres have received. Okay. And that's Drew Thorpe, the number one guy, in my opinion. First off, with Drew now being traded, I feel there's a strong possibility being that the capital that was spent to acquire him is now for like thrusting him into actually getting a start this season and actually getting, I wouldn't say maybe breaking camp, but there's that possibility. But more of him getting that like Super 2 call up where Drew Thorpe is then going to be, brought up in the same way that like Yuri Perez was, that timeline. And then boom, we'll see what happens. Thorpe has all the upside in the world. And honestly, like Padres do a fantastic job with just developing their pitching. So I can see Thorpe being, successful there. And the dude has shown nothing but that possibility through A plus and double A last year alone. My dude did show some serious potential. 2.52 ERA, 139 innings pitched, 182 strikeouts, a .98 whip. He has been fantastic. He was one of the players that played in college, played about 3 years there, and then finally entered in the draft. In 2022, he had a 2.32 ERA. In 21, my guy just decided to just have a monster season as well, 379. Always just been a strikeout machine. And I don't think that there is any doubt in my mind that this dude just can't come out and perform. I was actually a little disappointed that we had to let him leave the Yankees because of the, just the sheer power and sheer explosiveness of Thorpe and the possibilities of him getting on the mound for us. And just the win potential with the Yankees too, for a fantasy perspective with Thorpe. So, for him to leave this team is a little upsetting as a Yankee fan and as a fantasy baseball fan. But at the same time, he could have gone to such a worse position. And the Padres aren't a terrible landing spot, especially since you go from Yankee Stadium pitching there to now in the Padres home field and pitch half his games there, which is, a little bit further of a porch and a little bit more of a pitcher's park. So like Thorpe is going to benefit from that when he does get that call. So I don't know if I'm saying let's draft him, but I'm somebody you're going to put right here in the back of your mind. And, if we start hearing buzz that he might make opening day rosters, then Thorpe is somebody I'm going to say, hey, okay, we need to draft. We're not going to have to get him too high because he is a pitching prospect versus a batting prospect. So there's not too many of those guys that are going to be thrusted that high into the ADP at least. So Thorpe is just somebody to keep in mind, and then we'll probably circle back around to him as we get closer. Let's move on. Let's talk to the other dude that was involved in this trade, and that's Michael King. Michael King finally got his shot at the bigs, like not the bigs, but like shot at the rotation essentially, where he was able to carve himself out a whole role with the injuries that were, unfortunately there for the Yankees with, Rodon going down and Cortez going down and, Severino just not living up to to what his potential is. Moving on to the Mets, thank God. Michael King just came in, stepped up, was a big boy, put his big boy pants on, and really did his thing. Posted about 104 innings last year. He had 127 strikeouts. He had a 2.75 ERA with a 1.14 whip. Fantastic numbers, honestly. And he was able to capitalize on that opportunity and really hold his own. And again, he is going to benefit from all the things I was talking about with Thorpe, where, he's going to be now pitching half his games in San Diego versus Yankee Stadium, which is a giant bump, and they're going to do well with him being in that lot in that rotation. And Michael King, if it has the potential to win games too, because if we see Manny Machado bounce back, which I believe he will, Bogarts be another year in that system, and the rest of that team kind of step up. I feel that they're going to win games, put King in a position to be successful, and King is going to do a good job. Now, in terms of relevancy, where I'm drafting him, now that's a whole nother animal. Um, 'Cause I didn't have him too high in all honesty in my rankings because he wasn't somebody like I'm like targeting early, and I really don't know where he stands with ADP. But like I have him pretty much down. I'm just trying to pull him up. I apologize, I didn't have that lined up ahead of time. But essentially, he isn't somebody I foresee going super high in those regards. Um, but I have him as like my 55 overall pitcher, which is like your early pitcher 5 or late pitcher 4, which depending on the league size, I think that it's okay to get him. I don't think his value is hurt. If anything, it's pretty more solidified at the fact that he has more of a stable place to pitch. So I'm pretty happy about his landing spot, and it kind of makes me feel a little bit safer at him. And depending on how he looks in spring training, I could foresee me moving him up maybe a couple spots, but not much more. But the upside in Dynasty could be a lot better. So we shall see. He's only 28. Let's move on. I feel like I've spent enough time on this trade. Let's move over to some other signings now. And let's talk about Craig Kimbrell signing with the Orioles. Kimbrell, I think, was darting out of Philadelphia after blowing 2 games during the World Series and just did not have too wonderful of a playoff run in general. I feel like, it was a little lackluster, underperformed, gave up in big moments, things that, you didn't really see from him in the past. So, like, with Kimbrel, I feel like now he's going to be in a better place, honestly, especially with Batista now getting TJ and not coming back. Kimbrel is going to pretty much step into the full time closer role. And it's actually for fantasy, maybe not for real baseball, pretty valuable. We saw what Batista was able to do. Obviously, they're not on the same level anymore. Kimbrel in his prime, yes, 100%. But, Mr. Old Stationary down to it is just, not, he's not, I wouldn't say a shell of who he used to be, but he's nowhere near what he used to be. But, ultimately did have a good season last year, I think, as a whole. He had 23 saves with a 3.26 ERA and 94 strikeouts through 69 innings. So like the numbers are still solid, uh, but they're nowhere where they used to be, where you look back in his prime where the dude was just like a consistent machine, where like you see 2 ERAs and 1 ERAs throughout his career, and hence why he's probably going to end up in the world Hall of Fame one day. But for fantasy, let's talk about that now. And ultimately, we all know how good the Orioles are and how explosive that team can be, especially with players that are going to be called up, and then over this year with, I think, maybe even Jackson Holiday probably breaking the open day lineup, which is my early prediction, and a couple other dudes, and plus everybody else that's been called up having a second year and third year under their belts, with Rutschman and Gunnar. He's now going to benefit from that lineup behind him, and possibly have a boatload of more saves. I haven't done my relief pitching rankings yet, but I will say that I am excited to see where I have him ranked. He's probably going to be a top 10 closer for me. And possibly, in the middle of that pack, maybe 5 through 7, just based off of opportunity and sheer volume. As to whether he's gonna, lose the job himself, I'm not sure. I don't think he's really got that in him. I think pretty much if he's available, he's gonna get the everyday play. But before I move on and we talk about, you know, where Otani's gonna land, some more guys that have shown out their landing spots and whatnot, I got one last sponsor for you. All right. Also, too, guys, I want to let you know about what's going on with Locked On as a whole, the whole network. We have now gotten on YouTube our first 24/7 sports channel where you're going to get all your national shows and local shows all day, every day, including us, fantasy basketball, football, etc. So you want to go and check us out. First ever 24/7 sports streaming channel on YouTube. Check it out. But all right, let's move on from Kimbrel to now Eduardo Rodriguez. My guy also decided to sign with, I believe, I believe the Diamondbacks, if I'm not mistaken. But let me double check my notes here. Yes, the Diamondbacks. Now, I kind of like that landing spot. You know, age 30, kind of always thought he would kind of do much more than what he's done with his career. Kind of was just in a bad spot in Detroit, didn't really get to go and do what he probably should have been doing. The career numbers are kind of all over the place, especially even with Boston. So, he hasn't really just been that guy, but he did show a couple bright spots where you just say, okay, maybe he's going to break through. But maybe on the Diamondbacks, he can do that. There is a nice lineup behind him, and he did have, a really nice season at age 30. He had 152 innings pitched, which you like to see, 143 strikeouts. He had a 3.30 ERA with a 1.15 WHIP. All great numbers. The only thing I really wish he would have is a K per nine, which we all know which is possible for him. In all honesty, he's always been well over a K per nine, so I foresee that like returning. He's another one too that may not do what he's supposed to do, like what you would think he'd do within certain categories, just new year, new team. But we shall see with him. Maybe it's a different turn of events going from like a awesome, like a bad spot to now an awesome opportunity where he gets to go to the Diamondbacks who finished in second last year. Maybe can give him a little burst as well. I don't know. But I mean, Eduardo Rodriguez isn't somebody I really have, super high in my rankings. He's an interesting name. So, we shall see. I kind of just want to see where how he's doing come spring training. I have him as like my 73 pitcher right now. That is probably going to move up as we get closer. And honestly, just with this news alone, I'm probably going to move him up, but not too much. Probably into the, maybe 70 or, late 60s pitcher overall. Like I'm not going to go too crazy. Like this isn't like he's going to the Yankees and like this dude has had a couple good seasons looking like Rodon. So ultimately, we shall see where I really want to keep him and let him go. But all right, let's start talking about possible free agent landings now, and let's start with the elephant in the room, and let's talk about Shohei Ohtani. Shohei, obviously, there's plenty of suitors. Everybody's courting him, like little Miss Daisy down on the prairie. Trying to get him to be the date to the prom and join their team. Which you know what? Why wouldn't you? The guy is one of the best players in baseball, if not the best player in baseball. On the downside is he's going to have TJ, but they're expecting him to make a debut at least at bat almost from opening day, if I'm not mistaken, or at least like 3 weeks in. So this is all great news. We're not going to see him pitch probably for a full year, but it is what it is. I always feel like Shohei is just a serious monster. And I'm excited to see where he's going to land. He's going to boost whatever team he lands on. Predictions for me, though, where I foresee him. Obviously, the Dodgers are always in a mix. I think the Yankees might have shot their load with Juan Soto and are going to probably focus on signing him, especially since they gave up that capital. So I think that pretty much takes them out of the running. But, Yankees in the past have never shied away from just spending buco bucks. So it's very well possible that they just try and snag up all the potential things. But I feel like Shohei not playing the field also clogs up a lot of things for them. So I don't know if he's a good fit, especially, just with how much the team needs guys being in the DH position. So we shall see. You know, you look at, teams like the Rangers or the Braves or, even the Phillies, but I don't think they're going to land him. I don't think that's a thing. Boston's in the mix. Uh, you know, I think the most likely landing spot now, unfortunately, is probably the Dodgers. And, it's ugly. It's going to be unfortunate. They're what Dom and I call the new evil empire, and they're just going to soak up all these crazy good players. But I could also see the Rangers coming in there and being a dark horse, adding him to that crazy arsenal with Evan Carter, Seager, Simeon, Adolis. They have a draw as well. So, I can't wait to see what Shohei lands. It's going to shake up baseball as we know it the second he decides to sign that pen across on that paper and that dotted line. So, Shohei is going to be very exciting in that point. So, can't wait to see what happens. But let's move on here. Let's talk about Mr. Yamamoto. Yamamoto, a very exciting Japanese name as well. It's going to be interesting to see where he lands as well because he has the potential to do exactly what Senga did last year and just be an elite pitcher because he's had success in his baseball career, and hence why everybody's trying to hop all over him too, just as crazy as Shohei. And we talked about him, I believe, this week as well on our part 2 of our pitching episode, where he wants to play with, other Japanese players, and why Dom and I thought that he could possibly land on St. Louis, going to play with Nootbaar, because Nootbaar and Yamamoto's mom are best friends. So it's a possibility he goes and plays there, or he can go wherever Shohei goes, or he can end up with, any other Japanese player, unless there's some probably overwhelming, uh, you know, contract offer that's out there that really just blows his socks off and he's able to really just, step over and just say, okay, I got to take the money and, just deal with it at that point. So Yamamoto is very exciting as well. I really hope somebody gets him. I think the best landing spot for him, though, personally, would be the Phillies, not just being a team that I like to root for, but I feel like they need a pitcher. Yamamoto could fit in really nice there with the culture and, really bond with that close knit team and kind of make a dude coming from overseas feel at home, especially with the city too. Like if the city gets behind you, then, you get a lot of support and you feel warm. And, that's something I would at least want coming from overseas and not having too much of my family around where I can make my new family. So Yamamoto, I think, would be a great fit here in Philly. But who knows? He might just go ahead and sign anywhere where there's a sign in St. Louis and also still be as valuable for that as well. But all right, I'm going to talk about this one last dude, and then I'm going to get out of here on this, and that's Blake Snell. The possibilities and the fantasy implications could be massive for Blake Snell. I think that he's going to land on a team where he's going to be appreciated, get paid buco bucks, and then also go for a World Series title. So, obviously Yankees come to play. I really hope they snag him, but the likelihood is kind of not really going to happen. I could see, him going to Philly. That would be another great landing spot. They need another pitcher. I know that owner has now not shied away from, spending money on players, but he's been more, pointing towards bats and such. So, I don't know how realistic that is. And then lastly, I think probably the Dodgers are always in the mix, or the Rangers again, and the Braves. So like we'll see where he does end up landing. But all the teams I just named, I think have serious fantasy implications, so much more than what the Padres can offer. And Blake Snell can be what a fantasy asset. He could be a top 10 pick, which I think I already have him ranked as a top 10, not pick, but top 10 pitcher. So Blake Snell is somebody I'm definitely excited to see where he's going to land. With that being said, guys, thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. Make sure to check out that 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube for Locked On Network. And, please give us a 5-star rating and review on, wherever you may listen. But that's all for today. Make sure to check out Dom's episode next, where he's going to be, talking about prospects from 2023 and 2024 class. All right. Peace.